Listener warning. Please be advised that this episode contains content that may be disturbing to some listeners, including descriptions of violence and sexual assault. Listener discretion is advised.
Life upon the wicked stage ain't ever what a girl supposes.
I'm Jen.
I'm Ashley.
And I'm Olivia.
And we are, in fact, three different people.
This podcast focuses on true crime under the spotlight of arts and entertainment. So grab your beverage of choice and settle in.
Places, ladies.
Here's our episode.
We're here.
We did it.
Welcome, friends.
Hello.
we've got bevies.
Oh. Mm-hmm.
Olivia has a kimono.
And water.
That's right. I have water. I have wine, and I have tea. I'm set.
Jen has all the beverages.
Listen, whatever I need.
I picked a bad day to stop drinking, is what it is.
Oh my goodness. Well, everyone, welcome to the Wicked Stage Pod.
Woohoo!
Yes, life upon the wicked stage.
Here
Murder,
we are.
Mayhem and Maud.
Maim.
Maud?
Okay, Maim.
Edit that out. Wait, ready? Welcome to Life Upon the Wicked Stage. Murder, mayhem, and maim. There we go.
Nailed it.
Nailed it. Ladies, this is our very first episode of this true crime podcast in the spotlight of arts and entertainment. Well, also though, I mean, it's a little beyond true crime even, because we have some scandals and some hauntings on the docket. So a
little bit of everything.
It's exciting.
A little bit of everything.
A little bit of everything.
We should probably
introduce.
Go ahead, Olivia.
Yeah.
That was it.
Who we are and what we're doing and how this got started. So, all right. My name's Olivia DeMarco.
She is.
Actress of stage and shower.
Just hit my microphone. That was so funny. Sorry.
So, I was... the idea for this, I was in a production of Billy Elliot in the before times, before COVID.
It was fabulous, by the way. I saw it.
Thank you. And I was backstage talking to some fellow ladies in the ladies' dressing room and talking about how much we love true crime podcasts. And maybe it was a ghost in the theater whispered it, but I just had this idea and I was like... What if there was a true crime podcast about stage and theater murders, and it was called Life Upon the Wicked Stage? And that was in like 2018 or 19.
Wow.
And then nothing ever happened. And then recently...
then something pretty big happened, it stopped everything from happening.
That's true. Then the world ended for like a minute.
Right.
Yeah. And then just... A few months ago, Ashley and I were out Knitsing.
Ashley waves so everybody knows who you are.
That's right.
It's
yes.
me.
The one that kind of looks like me, but isn't. And I
got bangs just so we could tell each other apart.
So we were talking, and I don't remember how it came up, but I was like, one time I had this podcast idea, and I told her, and Ashley, stopped what she was doing and she was like, what? She's like, no, but can we do this? No, but can we make it happen? And I was like, I mean, I guess I've thought about it for a long time and I never did anything about it. And then she was like, we're doing this. And then, I roped in Jennifer Bonner.
Hey, that's
Wave
me.
Jen, the one with the bangs.
Differentiate till I decide to grow them out because I'm fickle.
Yeah, and so that's kind of how we ended up here. So here we are.
Yeah.
I would like to jump in and just say, not for anyone listening, but for anyone watching this, and for anyone who knows one or two or all three of us, we are in fact three different people.
Look at that.
This has been the subject of controversy for a long time. And I think when you see us all together, like side by side, it's like, of course you are. But people think Olivia and I are the same person for like the better part of 15 years?
Yeah,
Olivia?
probably.
Like,
yes, people have been like, "Do you know Ashley? Do you know Olivia?" Before we even met, it was, "You look like this person," and yeah.
Well, and some people had us because we have both worked in marketing spaces in Central Florida, where we both live. Some people have us fully fused in their minds as being just exactly the same person. Like, you both have done marketing jobs, you've both been in theater things, and you're like pale ladies with dark hair and heart-shaped faces. And apparently that just
excellent marketing skills.
But then Jen, same thing. Like people also think Jen and I are the same person. My favorite confusion there is like, probably 20 years ago, Jen and I were doing shows at the same wonderful community theater. Yeah. And Jen was in, I want to say it was a Man for All Seasons.
It was Man for All Seasons. Yep.
Man for All Seasons. And a review came out of the show praising Ashley Wilsey's incredible performance with a photo of Jen.
It's so confusing.
Margaret Moore. Well done.
I was not in the show. I had never been in the show. I didn't audition for the show, but I apparently gave a wonderful performance.
You did. And people have said to you, even, like, you were so
great.
good. And you're like, Jen was. Thank you.
Jen was. Yeah. She was. Yeah. So we are in fact three different human beings.
We are.
I will say that I don't think anyone has confused Olivia and I, but that's usually because we're in the same room together. I think.
But also, like, why? So am I the common link? Like, is it me? Like, I'm
you. You look like me, and you look like Jen, but Jen and I don't look like each other, which is really.
Yeah, I'm the midpoint. We make a little Venn diagram, and I'm like,
and
the
Ashley's
crossover.
in the middle.
It's me.
I love it.
My favorite of Ashley and my mix-up was there was I think, well, I don't want to say the name of the actor.
You can say it offline.
It was,
so we all know.
Yeah,
we'll
is
put it
there
in a group
chat? Can I put it in a chat?
Put it in a Patreon.
Put it in a
sponsors.
Patreon. Yeah, that's right. That's right. Hold on, I'm going to put it in the chat so that nobody can see it but us.
Oh my God! So we can all laugh. Oh, there is a chat.
Yeah,
we're using stuff for the first time.
I forgot his first name, but it's that one. Do you see that first name? So Ashley had a director of marketing position at a local theater for a few years, several years, and then she left, and I came in and took the same job. And people within the building started commenting about how funny it was to walk by the office and think they were seeing the same person that had been there because we looked the same. But then 4 years later, I left. Ashley came back. And an actor said something to Ashley about, a couple months ago, blah, blah, blah. And Ashley was like, that wasn't me. I haven't been here for 4 years. And he was like,
know that, right?
What? And she's like,
no, we've been talking.
Yes, we've been talking.
He was picking up the thread of a conversation. Like I knew what he was saying.
I had
I'm
with
very
him.
confused. Yeah. I watched his brain explode before my eyes.
Yeah.
It was,
and he's very sweet, a very sweet young man. He's pretty.
We were fully fused in his mind.
In his mind. Yep. We broke him. We broke his brain that day. Yep.
We did. It was great, though. Well, this podcast, if we get everything right, I believe this first episode will be heard by listeners on Friday, September 13th, because,
Friday the 13th.
Of course, I know, just in time for spooky season, but just know we're recording this a few weeks ahead of time. So if anything major has happened in the world the week of Friday the 13th, we may or may not be commenting on it because... Yeah. Well, I would also just like to notate the Life Upon the Wicked Stage. Olivia, while being a very creative individual, did not just pull that out of thin air. That is actually the name of a song.
Yes, for those of you that don't know.
That's right.
For those of you who don't know, for the uninitiated, welcome.
Right. Welcome to...
It is a song, according to my notes, from 1927, which I did not know this musical was that old, but the musical Showboat, which was one of the very first musicals to actually sort of depart from the, I'll say like variety show, like model
vaudeville.
Of what was, And they're like, we're going to do one story. So like the whole night, the whole show, all the songs, it's all centered around one story, and we're gonna have like scenes like a play, because like there were plays and there was like vaudeville, but musical theater, like as we think of it now, like that really wasn't a thing until like the last 100 years. So it's from Showboat, and it was Jerome Kern and Oscar Hammerstein. You may recognize Hammerstein from their later work in Rodgers and Hammerstein. But Showboat, it was this just really significant moment in like American musical theater history. So the song Life Upon the Wicked Stage, it's performed in the show by this character named Ellie, and she's like a comedic actress, but it is like describing essentially how actresses then and sometimes even now were sort of like, oh, you're a prostitute, or and now a sex worker now. But at the time, they're like, you're synonymous with you're synonymous with being a sex worker because you are showing your ankles, you're making a spectacle of yourself on the stage, and how unladylike. So she has this song, Life Upon the Wicked Stage, where she's like, everyone assumes the worst of me and my reputation, and like this is just my job, and like I just want to have a normal life. My life is very boring, out of the spotlight, but everyone just assumes the worst.
I love it. And we're going to learn a little bit about that when I do my first starring role in our podcast.
Preview of coming attractions.
We're going to, preview of coming attractions. Because I believe, if I remember correctly, that the word for actress and prostitute in some languages is still synonymous.
That's right. And a fun little anecdote, if anyone wants to give it a goog, I'm stealing that from one of my favorite true crime podcasts. We'll talk about it later. Give it a goog. There is a wonderful version of Life Upon the Wicked Stage, which was done by a baby Anna Kendrick. She's probably 11.
Love her.
And she is singing Life Upon the Wicked Stage with a chorus of Kit Kat Girls from the current revival, from the current back then revival of Cabaret.
Oh my goodness.
And so she is singing Life Upon the Wicked Stage is no place for a girl, and then it kicks into the dun 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 dun, and they're all thrusting, and she's in a little baby doll dress. It's absolutely hysterical. So
we need to find this. Put this on the socials, on our Instagram account, which by the way, we do have an Instagram account.
We do.
You can follow us.
Yeah. Ashley made it.
I missed that text. Sorry.
As of the launch of this podcast, there will be an Instagram account, which hopefully many of you will already be following by September 13th. But it is just the Wicked Stage Pod, or rather Wicked Stage Pod. There's no the on our handle. I'm got to keep it tight for the gram.
That's right. Got to keep it tight for the gram.
Faster, funnier, louder, as they say.
That's right.
Fewer characters.
I'm so glad I have you guys, because I only know the Wicked Stage. I know nothing about
marketing. You don't know the marketing stage. It's also very wicked, by the way.
Potentially fraught at times.
Yeah, maybe we'll do like an episode on true crime or murders within the marketing field, or want to be murders within the marketing. Who would you like to have killed as you've been a marketing director?
Marketing field. We'll do listener stories.
Anonymous.
It's turning into like a confessional. Email in.
Yeah.
I love it.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, we'll create a separate email account for that. Just
anonymous. Send them in.
Oh my gosh. Send them in. Yeah, we won't tell. Your secret stays safe with us. Today's very first episode, from a content standpoint, Jen has teased what will probably be our second or third episode here. But our very first episode, I was like, well, let's maybe kick off with something that if you're a fan of musical theater, you may be familiar with. And if you're a fan of all things stage, you may be familiar with. But from a historical standpoint, I feel like this is one of those things that has been sort of forgotten in the larger context of the last century. When you put it in context, it's really been chiefly like, this is not as big of a deal as it was when it happened. Yeah, so today's subject is Evelyn Nesbitt, who people may know from the book and also stage show Ragtime. I think more on that later. What do both of you know about Evelyn Nesbitt in the context of Ragtime, like the book and or movie and or stage show?
She's the girl on the swing.
The girl on the swing, yeah.
And she's the only one I've ever wanted to play in that musical.
Why does she say we? Can anyone provide context for this? Because in my reading, just spoiler alert, there is no reason for the we, but it is synonymous now with her in the stage show.
Because she's on a swing. She enters on a swing and she's swinging. So it's, part of her song. But she had a pretty, speaking of scandals, even though it's true crime, but she had a little scandalous life. She did pretty fabulous. So I'm so excited.
Pretty fabulous. She has this one big number, as Jen said. It is a role in the stage musical, and she has this big song, and then she sort of appears in cameo appearances in a few other scenes, but she's not a major character. But Ragtime is just, it's this profusion of a whole lot of different events within different social castes and different ethnic groups at the turn of the century. So it's, immigrants and Black Americans, and it's affluent white Americans, and how all their stories are colliding. So incredible musical. Evelyn Nesbitt is this teeny tiny piece of it. But the more I learned about her through multiple books that I read in preparation for this, I would just like to say the storyline is really kind of done a disservice in the song, because they take tidbits of what happened, and it's mostly true, but they have her painted with much more agency, I think, than her real story actually entails. So I'm just gonna kind of talk through the lyrics of the song. I'm not gonna sing them. I'm gonna talk them.
But she could sing them.
She could sing them, and also what a challenge, because I can't talk through something he can sing.
Right.
I'm gonna Rex Harrison my way through this.
Yes. Rex Harrison it.
The name of the song is also Crime of the Century, because this entire case at the time, it was in fact labeled the crime of the century. Yep. And as the joke in Ragtime goes, the character of Emma Goldman says, and even though the newspapers called it the crime of the century, Goldman knew that it was only 1906 and there were 94 years to go.
Way to have a low bar, Goldman.
I know, right? Goldman's hey, real talk.
She was fighting for some stuff, so she's hold on.
There are bigger problems.
Yes.
It's remember, it's who could have foreseen OJ? But that's a whole other thing.
That's a whole other thing. We'll get there, maybe.
We'll get there, maybe. I don't know. He was in some movies and commercials.
He was
had
in some movies. Yeah.
He had a showbiz turn. Was it Naked Gun? Anyway, we digress. So the top of the song, she comes out, and it's this vaudeville courtroom setting, and she says, "Your Honor, I was once the lady friend of Stanford White. He's the famous architect. Yes, that's right. He put me on a velvet swing and made me wear, well, hardly anything. Ruined at the age of 15, Your Honor. Then I went and married Mr. Harry Thaw." And it's interesting. They call him Harry, but he goes by Harry and Henry alternately. Sidebar. "Eccentric millionaire. Oh, Harry's a jealous man. Bang, bang. That was the end of Stan. Boo-hoo, Your Honor, beware. My Harry went crazy, I swear." And then they do the little chorus about how it's the crime of the century. And they kind of go on from there. But that is the main thrust of her storyline. So I read a couple different books for this, and feel free to chime in with questions and or color commentary. But the main one I read was The Girl in the Velvet Swing, which is outstanding. It was a New York Times selling author for the thrill of it. Simon Batts here, but it's sex, murder, and madness. At the dawn of the 20th
entire
century.
podcast.
I know.
I love it.
It's very, very close. And then also subsequently, American Eve is another one I read for this. And this was, again, also just a really well-reviewed, really excellently put together book. So many great photographs too of Evelyn Nesbitt. She was this gorgeous model turned actress, but just kind of going through her early life, giving some background and some context. The song says that she was ruined at the age of 15. And I feel like the implication in the song is that she was ruined because she was on this swing, exposing herself. And that is simply not true. That is not what went down at all. So Evelyn Nesbitt, she was born in 1884 in Pennsylvania. And her father died young. And, back then for women, it was just really hard to be a unmarried single mother. You didn't have a lot of options for work.
Right.
So her mother was, by all accounts, just extremely overwhelmed, emotionally by what had happened and the death of her husband, and was just really not able to rally. So she had these two relatively young children. So pretty quickly the mother moved the family to New York City. So she's like, let me try to get, maybe, like get some work there because it wasn't happening for them in Pennsylvania. And at this point, I think they moved to New York City in 1900 was when her mom moved the family there. And within a year, Evelyn had just started getting all of this attention because she was just really beautiful. Photography had come into vogue, and also just like, posing as like an artist model. So like, posing for sketches and for watercolors, but also just like photography being used for modeling had emerged.
She's in New York. It's not happening in Pennsylvania.
No,
as
not
someone
happening in Pennsylvania.
from Maryland, it's not happening. It's not happening.
Yeah, exactly. So she became this sought after artist model. So this was, it's a murky time because it was like, people got married younger back then, and there was stuff that was a little bit more socially acceptable.
Women are property. It's fine.
Women were property. And at the same time, she's super young when this is going down. She's like 14, 15. So by all accounts of the day, it wasn't maybe as shocking as, child actor type stuff would be today. And at the same time, it's like, this girl is a kid. Like,
she's a child.
She couldn't even have a driver's license today. This is a very young person. But her mother pretty quickly saw like, oh, this is the way for our family to make money. So the mom really kind of kicked back, and Evelyn became the breadwinner. So you have this 15-year-old girl. She's got a younger brother he's a couple years younger than her, but she quickly is supporting the family as this model. So like other, beautiful girls of the day and, being in New York City, as Jen pointed out, she starts attracting a lot of attention, and she becomes semi-famous just as a model. And so she ends up working in the chorus of this. I don't think they really classified it as vaudeville. It's just we're calling it Broadway, but it was the show called Florodora. Which was Florodora. And they were boasting, like, one of the selling points of the show was like, we have all the most beautiful women like in New York City, or like in the chorus. And all of their legs, exactly. They're all in Florodora. And it was, by all accounts, like it was a hit show. Like it was a really good show. A lot of shows, it sounds like, reading some other shows that like she tried to be in later, or she like appeared in or was cast in, like they would open and then it would like do terribly. So like a month later they would close it. But Florodora ran for a very long time. So she's in Florodora and again is just receiving all of this attention. So one of the people who she attracts the attention of is Stanford White, who is here he is.
Appearance.
Here he comes. Enter stage left. Yeah. Stanford White.
And mom exits stage right. The original dance mom over there.
The original dance mom. Truly, yes. So she meets Stanford White in 1901. So again, she's
a year after she got there.
A year after she got there. I think not even a year. Like looking at, I didn't write down the exact math, but like they moved there, I think fall like 1900, and by like spring 1901, she's like floating around in all these circles. So they're introduced at a party, and she just meets him at a post-show hangout for the Florodora girls. But Stanford
they were
White,
Florodorable.
Stanford White, though, I would just like to say, like, for the record,
sorry, that's my Chihuahua, Jack Sparrow.
Jack.
He's sitting on the back of our couch, staring at me across the room and woofing. What? This is not about you.
My puppy got out of his pen at some point. I'm not sure how, but he's laying in front of his fan now, so he's...
Sorry. That'll probably be a recurring theme throughout these, just so
it will be.
Because he's a very vocal, tiny dog. Yeah.
He is. I know experience.
Back to Florodora and the 15-year-old at a cast party.
Cast party.
Probably shouldn't be there, but yeah. Mm-hmm.
We've all been to those.
Teens at a cast party. What could go wrong?
Teens at an adult cast party with old men. I'm pretty sure that's how Hollywood got started.
I'm sure quintessential. Well, Stanford White really is, and again, not to speak ill of the dead, but also Stanford White is kind of the quintessential, just like creepy old man. And
speak ill of him, then.
I say, well, we're about to find out what he allegedly did. But Stanford White is 30-something years older than Evelyn Nesbitt. I think he's 33 years older than her. So we have a 15-year-old girl, and we've got... And we've got, you know, a 48-year-old man and more than old enough to be her dad. And then so it was just from the get-go, like this was like alarm bells and awooga noises, but like, you know, some other famous industry. We need a sound effect.
We do.
I know.
Awooga noise. You know what? We should have a sound effect every time there's a creepy old man that enters any of these crime shows.
We
that
should.
has
Like,
ill
yes.
intentions.
We'll come up with
this.
something. Yeah. Yep. A horn, anything. A warning bell.
So creepy old man enters, but he was a revered public figure because he was a celebrity in New York City. He was this famous architect. He had co-founded an architectural firm, McKim, Mead and White, all the way back in 1879, well before Evelyn Nesbitt was even born. But they were probably the most prestigious and influential architecture practice in the United States, let alone in New York City. So they were getting like all of these high profile commissions, and they had really also pioneered, White in particular, he had this very opulent and eccentric design style, and he was drawing all this inspiration from like Renaissance architecture, and everything was like very ornate and like a lot of, you know, carved, like beautiful details where, you know, we're facing the Industrial Revolution here at this point. We're right on the cusp of that. So a lot of buildings were just, you know, big boxes and very utilitarian, just like, get it built, like, you know, make a factory. And Stanford White is like, no, let's make it beautiful. He traveled extensively in Europe. So this is his whole shtick, is like, what if we made it form and function?
What if it was pretty?
What if it was pretty? Exactly. So this is his whole thing. And everyone is like, amazing. Some of his notable projects, many of which are still around today, but the Washington Square Arch is him.
I remember that. Yep.
Yep. In Washington Square Park, still there. It was designed to commemorate the centennial of George Washington's inauguration. The Century Club, which was a prestigious private club in New York City, known for its elegant and sophisticated design. He designed a whole bunch of like private homes and residences for like really wealthy clients. He's like, hey, what if I just did your house? And then he designed the original Madison Square Garden, which will feature heavily in this story. So the Madison Square Garden, it opened in 1890. It was, you know, now obviously like we know what it is, but at the time it was also like a multi-purpose event space. So it had
the same place as it is now.
Yes.
Cool.
Yeah. So it was in the same section of town. So it was meant to be, they had like apartments in it and like private residences in Madison Square Garden. And like he had a special like penthouse hangout spot where he's like, I built it. And also like, I made a spot for me.
There were a lot of theaters too that had like apartments above them for the producers and stuff. So I think that was kind of a thing.
Ooh, I wonder if that's where the casting couch got started.
I bet it is.
To my apartment, who happens
where a lot
to
of
be
ghosts live too. So we'll get to it.
Right above the stage door.
Yeah, so Madison Square Garden, they had multiple event performance spaces. It must have been huge. It's huge now, but even for the time. And it was considered one of the most beautiful buildings in the city. It was like this crown jewel. And it was interesting because they finished it in 1890. And then within the next like 10 to 15 years, that was actually when the theater district moved uptown to Times Square. So it was like, oh no. It was like, we built this beautiful theater and event space and Broadway's like, okay, bye.
Bye. And for anybody that's never been to New York, like if you don't go to that area, like you stay in your little area
in the theater district.
You don't go to other places.
Yeah.
If you live there, you don't really go to other places. And if you're visiting, you go to the theater district or wherever you're visiting.
Precisely, Jen. Yes. So they kind of like, they weren't like shut out, but at the same time, all these other theaters were being built and were renovated. And what is now the theater district, and Madison Square Garden was further south, like, you know, downtown. It was like, oh no. So
sad kazoo.
But I want to say I read something at some point, and I may have hallucinated this, but they also had like equestrian shows in there and like other stuff that had nothing to do with theater. But it was like, hey, we need a big space for our thing. Let's have it at Madison Square Garden was essentially what they would do. Wow. So So he's a huge deal. And he also was essentially a socialite because he's, one of the wealthiest men in New York City as well, because he is extremely successful. And he fancied himself to be a patron of the arts.
Did he?
He did. Mm-hmm. Yeah, just
ways.
Again, creepy old man alert.
Mm-hmm. Auga! Auga!
But he was also like an avid collector of like art and antiques.
God, I
but
thought
just
you
like
were going to say, of course, girls. That's where I thought we were going. He was an avid collector.
That came
but
later.
Jen,
yeah.
not that. Like
right.
He was, yes.
Yep.
Like this was,
Listen,
yes.
We all know that.
we all know them. But he takes notice of Evelyn Nesbitt, who's like this young, beautiful model, actress, etc. So he meets her in 1901, and this is where it gets muddy. So her mother is relying on Evelyn to be the breadwinner for the family from a professional standpoint. Stanford White is a patron of the arts and is like, I like you and I'm going to buy you gifts and
he had
take
her
you
best
places
interest at heart. He really did.
He really did.
Of course he did.
I'm going to invite you to my parties and include you in my social circle and invite you to my Madison Square Garden penthouse. Come over after the show and you can like mingle with artists. So
Yeah,
meanwhile,
that's
she
there.
comes inside. He's like, "Here's the party," and she's like, "Where is everyone? Why is it just you? Why is the lighting so low?" Yeah, mm-hmm.
Olivia,
Why
just
is
wait.
there music?
We will get there, because you have to remember she is coming in fresh. She's been in New York City, less than 2 years at this point, and she has come from like rural Pennsylvania.
Right.
So she is like capital S sheltered.
Capital S
Get it.
sheltered.
I get it.
Little Jen Bonner arriving in big Orlando, Florida.
Listen, it happened. We'll get into it later. When there's more wine and you guys know it's better.
So she is just sort of like, this is great. Like this man is like being nice to me, and he's inviting me to things, and he's introducing me to other people. Like he's trying to help my career. What could go wrong?
Yeah,
so
the mayor of Theatertown loves me.
Oh my gosh! So he introduces her to a photographer he knows who's relatively famous. I'm going to butcher his
That's
name.
all right.
I need to find it. No, I
We'll
want
put
to find
it in
it.
the socials.
So I'm going to spell it. It's EICKEMEYER. Eikemeyer? Eikemeyer?
Eikemeyer.
I don't know. So this is important because she does this photo shoot, and you can't see it very well, but she's laying on a polar bear skin rug. Yeah, drama. Yeah.
Very drama.
Polar bear skin rug, and she is wearing a kimono, and she is pretending to be asleep in this photo. So she's introduced to this photographer, and he takes a series of photos of her, but this is also where the velvet swing comes into play. So this photographer, for reasons past an understanding, has this velvet swing set up in his studio. And it's
like it just happened to be. He's just like, and there's a pole in the corner, but don't worry about that. It's just to lean on later. Mm-hmm.
Precisely. And neither of the books I read really unpacked what this was all about.
I think we know. I think we know what it's all about.
But it was this book that I was reading, the Girl on the Velvet Swing. They talk about it, and they said he would invite people over, just like, hey, come to my studio, have a photo shoot, or just like people he would entertain in his home. And they would, quote, play on the swing, in which people would just like, hey, I'm going to sit on the swing, and someone would push them, and they would, yeah, like literally.
So was it just him plus the victim, shall we say?
Yeah,
or was there anybody else pushing them on? You know what I mean? Was there somebody else in the room ever, or was it just the two of them?
So when she meets this photographer and has her first ride on the Velvet Swing, it was a group setting, and she was there with a girlfriend who was from the Floridor Company. They'd gone over together, and it was very innocuous, the first introduction. And both girls, they took turns on the swing, and I was like, okay.
Auga.
Exactly. And I was like, and I'm reading it and it sounds so innocuous, but I was like, I don't like this. Like, alarm bells are going off in my mind. Why do you have this in your home, sir?
Was he married before?
It doesn't say.
I know that.
It doesn't say about the photographer. Stanford White was.
Right.
Stanford White had a wife somewhere who is not hardly mentioned in the story at all until later.
Just paid for her and she's off shopping somewhere because that's what they did. They said, go on the Titanic. It'll be fine. I'll be here with the
Precisely. Yeah, very little mention is made of Stanford White's spouse, but so she's introduced to this photographer, and he has a swing. He's got polar bearskin rugs in his place. So she starts doing a series of photos with him, and they get published in fashion magazines. And this is sort of how she gets even more notoriety as being like, quote, the most beautiful woman in America. And she, like, these portraits of her essentially go viral, if that could be considered a thing.
Of
like
the time, yes.
Yeah, of the time. So where this comes in, where that photo I just showed you on the polar bear rug comes into play was noted that we'll call it an assault, because I think however you want to slice this, assault is the correct word. So the day after that photo was taken, Stanford White says to Evelyn Nesbitt, hey, I want you to come over after your show. This was not unusual. I will also say, looping back a little bit, Evelyn Nesbitt's mother had to leave town. She mentions this to Stanford White and was like, hey, can you low-key, like, chaperone my daughter and make sure she's okay while I'm gone?
Look in on her and tuck her in before bedtime. Maybe
because
read
you
her a
seem
story.
like a stand-up gentleman, patron of the arts.
He's a great guy.
Okay, so question: Did Evelyn Nesbitt's mother? Did she know? Was this like you're going to be a patron? She's unattended, or do you think she was really just country bumpkin unawares? What do we think?
Because that's what they did. A lot of chorus girls, especially, and dancers, like the patrons, part of the job was like
entertaining the patrons,
and they became their like girls.
Yeah. I'm going to go out on a limb based on some things that the mom did later that we'll get into, but based on some things that happened and were said later, I'm going to say no. And the mom was also that she didn't. The mom did not. She did not know the implications of taking this man's money and attention.
That's fair.
Okay.
Rural Pennsylvania. I get it.
Yeah.
Again, she was like, and she was again like thinking about we could have dove into this more, but just sort of her mental state, like when her husband died, it was very much like, my husband takes care of everything. I'm just a woman, and I just want to do my wifely thing and take care of my home and my children. And as far as having to navigate, not to be like, pejorative, but the big bad world, she was in over her head.
Well, especially in 1900, how could she? It wasn't viable for a woman to be able to navigate the world in 1900 by herself. So.
For sure. Yeah, she was not equipped for it. And she was also, it seems like she wasn't emotionally equipped for it. Like her learning curve was non-existent. She really just kind of sat back and was like, you know what, my daughter's making the money. I'm not going to worry about any of this. And I'm just going to close my eyes because, like, look, this nice, famous, super affluent man is a friend of the family.
Right. How lucky are we?
How lucky are we?
How lucky that happened. Yeah, absolutely. Yep.
Yeah. So she's got to go out of town. So she's like, hey, wealthy friend of the family, can you keep an eye on my daughter? So he's introduced her to this photographer, and he has been taking her to dinner more and more, and like, hey, like, let's meet up after your show and come over and come to my home for dinner, or I'll take you to a restaurant for dinner. And it's all been very innocuous until now. And I think reading between the lines, it seemed like Evelyn herself really sort of regarded him as this father-like figure. Yeah, there did not seem to be, from what I could see, any sort of romantic inclinations on her part. It did not seem like she was like, oh, I have a crush on an older man. It was not that. She was very much in the category of, this is just someone nice.
She trusted him, and he was grooming her.
I was just going to say,
absolutely,
that's what we call grooming in this day and age. Yeah.
Yep. So they do this. She does this photo shoot with this polar bear skin rug, and the following day, he's like,
that poor polar bear.
I know.
it's so, I think it's such an unhinged detail. Like, that's why it came up so much. It wasn't just like, hey, like, here's a portrait. There's lots of normal portraits of her.
Right. No, the polar bear.
No, the polar bear. Mm-hmm. So she does this photo, and then the following day he invites her over, and he's like, hey, come over after your show, you know, we'll have dinner, whatever. And she's like, all right, normal. So she goes over at night, and he had his place in Madison Square Garden. I think he had his house. This is my official house where people know I live. But he also had a townhouse. This man had a lot of
what
of
life that must be.
So he has this bachelor pad townhouse, which is, I think, near Madison Square Garden, but not like within. So it was more, Madison Square Garden was also more of a happening place. And I think that was more where he had people to entertain. But when he just wanted to be alone and have some privacy, he had this townhouse. Mm-hmm. So he invites her to the townhouse. And so she rolls up, and he gives her some champagne. And then he says, oh, hey, I want you to see something. Like, there's something here you haven't seen. I want to show you a room. And it was, I've read mixed accounts of this, and some of it was like, just, I want to show you something. And some of it was like, I want to show you like my new like decor, like new antiques I bought. But
look at this fancy chandelier that I have.
Exactly. You're like, what is happening here? Mm-hmm. So he lures her into this bedroom essentially that he has, and it is one of those, again, awooga noises. It's described as like this like windowless room, and it's like a room inside of a room is how they describe it.
You scream type of thing.
Right? Yes, like very panic room. Ooh. And it's like there's mirrors on the walls and/or ceiling ?
Are you sure they're not in Vegas?
And this room is very, very small, and there's really nothing in the room except just a big old bed, just a big old 4-poster bed.
Okay. I was going to say, I'm mentioning like a round one that like...
See, and my mind went to mattress on the floor. So like,
because like panic room.
Because like panic room, like...
Well, he's a gentleman. He needs the finer things, even in his panic room.
Yeah, no, not quite. But it's well decorated, but also like, super questionable. Yeah. So I'm trying to find my exact notes here on exactly the turn of events. So this is where accounts vary a little bit. And Evelyn Nesbitt herself, said different things at different times in her life. So there were things that she said to later her husband, Harry Thaw. And then there were also things that she said, like, to her mother. There were things that she testified to in the later trial. Then there were things she said later in life. I'm just going to classify this as an assault, though, because strap in, because this is wild. Okay. So he's given her champagne. He leads her into this room. She's been drinking the champagne. And she's like, I don't feel right. And he's like, oh, are you dizzy? ? Wow. Imagine that, because spoiler alert, the champagne has been drugged.
Of course.
He drugged the champagne. So he's about to go full Cosby.
Cosby. I was going to say, this is a Bill Cosby moment. Yep.
So he goes full Cosby, and he's like, oh no, you're dizzy? Like, you should lay down.
Lie down on this only piece of furniture in the room, which happens to be a bed. Oh my God.
Yes. And this is sealed in room. Lay down here for a second. You'll be fine. So she loses consciousness. And so she wakes up an undetermined amount of time later. Ooh. And according to the Girl in the Velvet Swing book, and this was one of her initial accounts, she wakes up and her inner thighs and the bed has blood all over it, and she's like wearing nothing but like, you know, her slip essentially. And then she looks over and she sees him next to her, and he is nude. So she freaks out, rightfully so. You've got this super young girl, and, you know, doesn't know anything about anything, and just doesn't even really know what's happened to her. She just knows I was awake one moment, and then I think I'm waking up with like blood on me. I'm sure some amount of pain. And there's a naked man who, by all accounts, it's like, you haven't seen a lot of naked men, let alone like this guy. So she freaks out, and then he essentially, and this is the part that I'm like, this is so insidious. He then chooses this moment, confess his love for her, and is like, I love you, and just, I couldn't help it, and I just had to have you, and I want you to be mine. It's terrible. And then he's like, well, this is normal. You have nothing to be worried about. This is completely normal. Yeah, this is what people do when they're in love. Oh no, like, don't panic. And essentially lies to her. It was like, not like I, assaulted you, but just is like, oh no, this is just a thing. Like, this is just what people who are in love do.
Oh,
yes. God. Yes. And then of course, like, is like, oh, by the way, like, don't tell anybody. Right. But I think she knows enough to know that some sort of line has definitely been crossed. Like,
because she has her gut instinct. She just doesn't know how to trust it.
Right. Exactly.
It's
like, you're like, I don't know exactly. I don't know how wrong this is, but I know it's a significant degree of wrong.
Something is wrong. Yeah.
Something's wrong. Yeah. Auga noises.
Auga.
Auga.
There she is. There she is.
So this is where it gets a little bit murky, because in later accounts, she moves away from saying, oh, he raped me. And she says, well, he seduced me. And I will just push back on that and say, if someone drugs you into unconsciousness and you are not able to consent to anything that happens in any way, I'm like, I don't think we can categorize that or should categorize that as seduction. That's just full-throated assault. Sorry.
She's probably romanticizing it to,
of course he is,
justify, she's to justify how, how she has to survive. Right?
Yeah. No, that's true. And dear listeners, if this is ever told to you, just know the three of us are on your side.
Yes.
Oh.
Yes.
God. Yeah.
That's all.
Yes. 1,000%. Yes, Jen. So speaking of justifying it to herself, so that's exactly what she does, essentially. And she's like, well, so any sort of amount of like attention or gifts that he has been like throwing her way, essentially like quadruples.
Right. Sure.
So
sure.
Mom,
keep your mouth shut and here's what you get, dangling the carrot.
Oh, look, here's some Tiffany's.
Yeah.
Truly.
Yeah.
So he essentially becomes like a full-on sugar daddy, and is like, he buys an apartment like for her mother, for the family to live in. And he starts like giving her essentially an allowance, and is like, hey, you're making your little showbiz money, your modeling money, but I am going to essentially take care of you.
What a trap. What a trap. Because if she speaks up, then it ruins everything for her family, for her mother.
Yep.
I got to say a really quick sidebar here, and I promise we'll get right back to the story. I absolutely got an email about a month ago from somebody offering to pay me $6,000 a month to be his, like...
Ooh.
Yeah.
Was this like a cold email?
Cold email. He said he found me on IMDb, and I sent it to Olivia, and she was like, don't. I was like, I'm not.
Jen, was there a polar bear involved?
There was no polar bear involved, but I am worth more than $5,000 a month. Thank you very much. Continue your story.
Thank you
very much.
I will add to that, Jen. Not nearly as bonkers, but I was on a date back in the day when I was still dating before my now partner, and it was just a routine dating app, like one of the ones we've probably all used at some point. Normal dating app. I show up for the date. It's clear, like within the first, 10 minutes, like, oh, this is not a fit. This isn't going to work. So sorry. Thank you so much. Let me finish my drink and like call it a night. Like this wasn't even like, let's stay and be polite. Like this was a hard pass. And and so he's like pushing back, and he really wants me to stay.
You're like trying to
swipe
left, like in the chair.
I was like, I just need to leave. Like this is a hard no. Like he was kind of obnoxious. Like he kept trying to like touch me in a way that I was like, don't touch my waist. I just met you like 20 minutes ago. Yeah. And so I'm clearly like, thank you so much. Like, it was really nice meeting you. I don't think this is, I don't think we're on the same page. Mm-hmm. And he says, well, what would it take to get you to stay? And before I can answer, he takes out $700 in cash and puts it on the table in front of me and is like, will this work? And I didn't know.
God, just take it and run.
And I didn't know. And I was like, first of all, what kind of app did you think you were using? And second of all, like, should I be flattered or offended? Like, what?
Right?
What kind of money?
How dare you? Like,
no, stranger danger. And I left immediately.
And you ran.
I I did not take the money. I declined the money and ran.
Yeah. What's scary for women too is when someone starts like kind of coming at you like that in an unprovoked way, and you're like, I have given clear indication I'm not interested, I'm not responding, and they keep coming at you, you don't want to upset them, because you don't want to be like, hey, like, fuck off. I don't know if we're saying profanity in the show, but like, fuck off.
We are.
Okay.
We are. We're explicit. Yeah.
Great. Excellent. Leave me alone, because then they can come at you like, oh, what's the matter, you bitch, blah, blah, blah. And then it can become like a scary situation. Well, so
they always say that men's biggest fear is being laughed at and women's biggest fear is being murdered.
Truly. Yes. Yes.
So
there was a study. This is true. Yeah.
It's so moral sad. Of the story, dear listeners, never meet a man.
What is it? It's like women worry about serial killers, and they're like, you're much more likely to be killed by your husband. Like,
that's why we love true crime. We're just preparing ourselves. That's all.
This is all educational.
It's all research.
Ooh, we should list this as an educational podcast.
We should.
That'll be our other. Yeah. I have us listed right now as true crime and also like arts and entertainment. But if we can choose a third option, it will be education. Yeah.
We'll put it in all the healthcare classes in 5th grade when you learn about your period.
We all have lovely and supportive partners in our lives, all of whom are of the male persuasion.
Right.
But,
right. And we're not.
Mine. We're not planning to kill them, but mine frequently is like, you listen to an awful lot of true crime. Are you studying for my murder? Like,
I do send Olivia texts quite often that say, I'll help you move the body. So,
and I know how to dispose of a body at this point with all the true crime I've listened to. So just saying,
pigs.
Just putting it out there, like we're not seeking this out, and at the same time, like if push comes to shove, and you show up at our door and won't take no for an answer, just know that we've got some knowledge stashed away, and we know how to use it,
and some lie stashed away. Knowledge and lie. That's really all you need.
And we're all actors, so man,
what a combo!
What a combo! Hey friends, Jen here, and we hope you're enjoying this episode of Life Upon the Wicked Stage. Just a few quick reminders. If you're looking for any of the visuals that we've mentioned in this or any episode of the podcast, make sure to follow us on Instagram at Wicked Stage Pod or Facebook at Life Upon the Wicked Stage. If you want more, please join our Patreon by searching the Wicked Stage Podcast. There you'll find ad-free episodes, videos of our recordings, mini-sodes, behind-the-scenes content, giveaways, and so much more. And the most important side note, if you like the show, please give us a nice rating wherever you listen. It sounds silly, but it's still the best way to get the word out and support us in this crazy podcast world. Well, lights are blinking, intermission's over, so grab those snacks and another drink and enjoy the rest of the show.
Well, so getting back to our storyline here. So
speaking of segues.
Speaking of segues, so fast forward. So Evelyn Nesbitt is now being taken care of by this guy. Mom is like, he's so nice. And Evelyn is, I will say overall, she's conflicted about this because she's like, I don't feel great about what happened. And at the same time, like, I kind of need this man's like attention. And it seems like after the initial like assault, she really does rebuff him romantically and is like, we are not going to be a thing. At the same time, the show Ragtime, the musical, and a bunch of other accounts essentially have her cast as Stanford White's mistress.
Yes, they do.
They're like, she's his mistress. And they talk about her in this way that it was like this like two-way relationship. And from everything I can see, this did not turn into a relationship, if you will. It went back to just a ramped up version of what it was before the assault, where he was like supporting her and taking care of her. And she was kind of like, he's like, I like having you around. And she would be like seen with him about town, but they were not having a relationship, like a boyfriend. Like she was like, and he wanted more. He was like, please marry me. And she's like, a hard pass. So he was more interested in her than she was in him. And at the same time, she really didn't have any agency. So even to push back against the mistress label, they're like, well, he supported you and you took money from him and you were seen at dinner with him and you went to events with him. Of course, you're his mistress. So,
but I also wonder how many other unwanted advances did she have to deal with?
That's what I was just going to say.
And she probably couldn't say no. So
exactly. How many times did those assaults happen? And you just stop talking about it because nobody believes you, or it doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter
now or in 1900.
Yeah, exactly. So that's the part that's kind of murky, but she seems to be like, I'm getting a bad vibe from this and I'm just going to try to move forward with my life. And she really did want to be an actress. She wanted to be, I want to be a great actress, someday.
I get it.
Whether or not she was actually talented, it sounds like the jury is kind of saying no.
Oh no.
She was beautiful, but was she talented? I think she was a quintessential, just an utterly satisfactory ensemble member.
Okay.
If she
which
was
we
just
need.
Which is totally needed.
Satisfactory ensemble members.
It's very important.
It's very important. But in terms of talent, it was like, your best thing is that you're really hot. And so you're a great model. Like, you're just this revered beauty, both in photos and on stage. But when it comes to your actual ability, you are not amazing. I found an audio clip somewhere. Maybe we can share it on socials, but I found an audio clip of her singing later in life when she went into vaudeville. And I was like, oh, that's your voice. I got the sense that just from a talent standpoint alone, she was not going to be a star because Floridora closes. So Floridora's over. They're like, this has been great. And Floridora is going to close. So she auditions for some other.
I just had to say it. I've been thinking it the entire time. Floridora the Explorer. Okay.
So she auditions for some other stuff. She gets cast in some other things, but none of it lasts long. It's like, oh, I got cast in the show and it ran for a month and then it closed. And she's like trying to audition for other shows and she's just not getting work as a performer. She's continuing to model, but that doesn't make as much money as the consistent salary of being a chorus girl somewhere. So, and again, she's and her family are being supported by Stanford White. So she, interestingly, a little drive-by in all of this is one of the Barrymores. I forget which one. I want to say it's John. Don't quote me on that. It's one of the Barrymores of the, famous Barrymore acting family.
Yeah.
Drew Barrymore's ancestors.
She's one of them. Yes. She is one of them, everyone.
It wasn't any of the famous acting Barrymores. Like, it wasn't like Lionel Barrymore. It wasn't any of them. It was one of the lesser Barrymores, but still part of the family. We'll fact check this. But one of the Barrymores, who was a young, handsome gentleman about town, and he's in the industry, his family's in the industry. So he takes notice of her and she thinks he's great. She's like, this is it. Like, this is my guy. We're going to be a thing. And that just for whatever reason did not work out. There really didn't seem to be any significant reason why that fell apart. It just, it started out real hot and it burned out real quick. But that was a significant relationship. And Stanford White is like, no competition, and essentially starts like kind of low-key interfering with her personal life, and not in a way that's like super overt probably to anyone else, like but Evelyn, but he is, again, like he's trying to get her to marry him. So anyone else who's like coming around, like he's just sort of shading them or saying things to her like, oh, he's no good, or oh, he's just a scoundrel, or
he's
just
like,
sort of
like the Judge Turpin of her plot line.
1,000% Judge Turpin of Sweeney Todd.
Sweeney Todd fame, guys. Yep.
Yeah, he's like, this young rogue. And it's like, this is a guy from a really respected family. I don't think he's just
a Barrymore.
He's a Barrymore. There's nothing wrong with this guy. And Stanford White's like, he's not good enough for you. So enter Harry Thaw. So Harry K. Thaw had been kind of a side character up until this point. He was a loose acquaintance. Evelyn met him in 1903. And he was also from Pennsylvania. He was a little bit older than her. He was born in 1871. So he's a little bit older than her, but he's more he's better suited as an age match than Stanford White, who's like, grandpa.
30 years older than her.
Yeah, like daddy, full on like daddy issues. So
in my mouth. Yeah.
So Harry Thaw is from this really wealthy family, and he was known for his wealth, erratic behavior, and violent temper.
Oh, wow. What a jackpot.
What a jackpot, right? So, but here's the interesting thing about Harry Thaw. So he's from this really wealthy family. Like, if Evelyn Nesbitt is from just simple folk Pennsylvania, he's from old Pittsburgh family money.
Coal money. Yeah.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah. So I don't have in my notes where his family's money came from, but it was an old money family for sure. And they were very concerned with appearances and the family legacy. So all of this, again, we're framing these events and stuff that happened at the turn of the century in excess of 100 years ago. Mental health is not understood really very well even today. Now, and 100 years ago, it was so much worse. So I'm not a doctor, but reading just more and more about Harry Thaw and like, what was his deal? I think it would be fair to say that there was some mix of narcissism along with bipolar disorder and possibly, I don't know if it was schizophrenia or he just had like
what a combo.
Full on. I would say the best sort of like overall diagnosis, and not to overuse the word, but he reads like a psychopath because here's the interesting thing. He was smart enough to control his behavior early on when he first meets Evelyn and is courting her. Okay. So Harry Thaw, behind the scenes, he is already known around town to be a piece of shit. So he's from this really wealthy family, and that's
around
really why
Pennsylvania town or around New York?
New York. So he has come to New York and he's like, hey, I'm, living my life in New York. This is like the center of all things happening. So he's living in New York. I think like his parents and like most of his family, they were still in Pennsylvania. He had a number of other siblings, many of whom had made affluent marriages. Like they had a lot of family ties, but he's living in New York. Right. But he's known about town as like a piece of shit. Like this is not a secret. Everyone is like, Harry Thaw, oh no. So it sounds like he is into like non-consensual sadism. It's like, hey, we're mutually into this kink together. No, Harry Thaw was like, hey, do you want to come over? Surprise, I'm going to tie you up and whip you. This was a thing.
A little Army Hammer. This was his thing.
I was just going to say House of Hammer.
I want to eat your ribs. Yeah.
Yeah, like come
on over for ribs. No,
also
ribs.
From old money. Like, is that a thing that we're now just putting together?
There's
also from old money.
Probably some like inbreeding issues there. You know what I mean? Marrying cousins because they keep the wealth in the family and.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Something going on there because it's similar to Stanford White. He was like, I am a man of wealth and influence, and he would meet young girls, chorus girls, because he also liked the theater.
Of course, he did.
He would meet young women and be like, come over to my place. And then specifically, he liked to whip people with a dog whip or a riding crop. Whipping people was his thing.
Okay.
It sounds like mostly women, but there was an instance where apparently later on, he's like staying in a hotel with Evelyn, and he low-key like kidnapped the bellboy and whipped the bellboy.
Sorry, that's not funny, but
it's not funny, but it's also, sir, you did not think this through. So some of his stuff, it seems like you are not in control of your impulses, and at the same time, when he is trying to ingratiate himself to Evelyn, he shows her none of this. So he has
classic
enough
narcissist.
Right.
And this is where I'm like, is it, are you a psychopath? Are you a narcissist? Is this
Are
bipolar?
you all the above?
All of the above. Whatever is happening with his mental health he should be studied, because this is a lot. And obviously, like, he's deceased and we can't now, but just reading through his own testimony and his own accounts and his time later while he was being institutionalized. Spoiler alert.
I was just going to say that.
Spoiler alert. This doesn't
Before the forced lobotomy, he was really a handful.
there's all this like really well documented, and throughout his life, and it was really sad, like flashing forward a little bit, his mother testified to this later during one of the trials, and this started from an early age, from when he was a little kid. He was like just super emotionally dysregulated. He was a horrible student in school because you know, it wasn't like he can't sit still. It was, no, he can't sit still, and also he just will get up from his chair and run over and start like beating on another student.
Right. He wasn't just a little neurospicy.
Yeah, he wasn't neurospicy. It was like
really...
there's a personality disorder at work here.
Right. Yeah, like he kept getting kicked out of like various, all throughout his young life, you know, schools and then universities and various academic institutions. I don't know how he even cobbled together an education. He kept getting kicked out for like violent outbursts and attacking students and faculty, and also for having, it sounded like also on the flip side, like suicidal impulses and stuff like self-harm. So it's a very, just a cacophony of issues there. But he didn't do himself any favors because he also struggled with like drug and alcohol abuse. You know, alcohol abuse is one thing, but it sounds like on drugs, he didn't necessarily like have a drug of choice. It was just sort of like whatever is around or whatever was offered to him. He was just like, sounds good. So
great.
Yeah, so it was like, you know, cocaine, heroin, whatever drugs of the day, but just he was an equal opportunity user, like just whatever, whatever was presented, he was like, cool. So you have this really unstable person, but he, for whatever reason, you know, it's the most beautiful woman in America, and maybe like the narcissism part was like, she must be mine.
She must be mine. I also came across a little interesting tidbit that he may have planned this because it was known that White was the patron, of Evelyn. And there already was a little bit of a rivalry between these two men before. Because Thaw was kind of known as, like you said, a shithead in society. And apparently he kind of blamed White for either spreading those rumors or keeping him out of circles. So he may have targeted Evelyn Nesbitt for her relationship to him. So
1,000%. And Olivia, that is the perfect segue.
Drama.
That is exactly what was going down. So Thaw is ingratiating himself to Evelyn and is like, hey, you should go out with me. And White, who again is, you know, paying the bills and was trying to swat away anyone who comes around, is not even having to talk shit about Thaw. He's just telling her the truth. He's like, this guy is super erratic and dangerous. But again, White has also talked shit about everyone who's ever come around.
He's cried wolf too much.
Right. It's like this perfect storm.
He's like, no, I really mean it this time.
I'm not just trying to keep you here.
He's like, you're in danger.
You're in danger,
Evelyn,
girl.
You in danger, girl. Yes.
So Evelyn, poor thing, again, at this point, she's like 17.
Oh
this is still...
She's had a hell of a time. She's like, what?
2 years. Jesus.
Right. It's like 2 years. She's like 17, 18 while all this is going on. So Thaw is like, I've got a brainy idea. I'm going to take you to Europe where I can have you to myself. So Thaw and his money, he's like, hey, I'll start taking over paying for shit for you. So there was an interesting anecdote. Thaw is like, let me take you to Europe. We'll take your mom as the chaperone. Ha! And
yeah, because her mom has been so useful before as like a guardian.
Jeez.
Like the worst cock block ever. Right. Just like, you're useless.
She works because she's like, you're interested? Okay, I'm going to go out of town. Here's my daughter.
Like, I'm sorry. I was like, Mrs. Nesbit, you're next to useless, ma'am. Yeah. So he takes Evelyn and mom to Europe, and he's like, I am courting her. The mom, interestingly, she's like, but she really loves Stanford White. And she does not necessarily see Stanford White as a boyfriend. She's not seen him romantically either, but she sees him as the protector. And so Stanford White has also told the mom, like, hey, this guy is bad news. So the mom is really apprehensive about Thaw, but it's like, well, I'm going to pay for your whole European vacation. So they leave for this European vacation with Thaw. And right before they leave, Stanford White, because he's so worried, and legitimately so, because this guy's a psychopath, he gives Evelyn's mother a $500 letter of credit in his name to take with her to Europe. So that, like, hey, if you get in trouble, here's money so you can make a break and
come
leave.
Home.
Yes.
Wow.
Yes. So you have both of these men like throwing money at these women, like, please.
How interesting. Because there's that weird then, like, well, maybe he really did have some genuine care for these people, even though he definitely
but
didn't
they're also
do
just
right
in
things.
Maybe, but they're also just in a pissing match with each other at this point.
Yes. It's. I think it's two things can be true at once. I think it can be, hey, I don't want this guy to win, but also I'm just concerned.
Yeah.
Because he is a jackass. Yeah. I'm not making it up this time.
Right. It's like, I'm really serious. I don't want you to be with anyone, but also this one is extra.
This
one's dangerous. Yeah. I mean, I am too, but this one works.
It was like, I've already assaulted you, but also this guy might like physically kill you? Like,
right. There are whips involved and more.
Right, exactly. Yeah. So there's various accounts about all this, and none of this is really super well documented, but this European trip is unhinged, and they're in Europe for months. Again, like, travel. It's not like you're bouncing to Europe for the weekend.
Right.
They're getting on an ocean liner.
Flight. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Right. It's like you're getting on a boat. Like, that's a whole thing.
Right.
So they start in London, and Harry Thaw's
best
whole
city in the
mission
world.
Is it?
The best city in the world. Sorry, everything else, but
all right, London, the best city in the world.
Best city.
So Thaw's whole mission is like, this is his big play to like woo Evelyn. He's like, I can show you the world. So he is taking her out and like, let me show you Europe because I've been before and you haven't. And he leaves her mother alone, essentially. So like they totally ostracize the mom. And I think at one point she's fully staying in like a separate hotel.
Right.
But the mom is like just left alone, sitting in her hotel room all day, every day, all night, while he's whisking around with Evelyn to like, art galleries and restaurants and theater. So mom, again, just worst cock block ever, totally useless. She gets bored and is like, I'm going to peace out because I'm not having fun. Mm-hmm. So they go on to Paris and the mom goes back to the States. She just fully leaves.
Wow.
And so it was like, hey, you're supposed to kind of be the chaperone, at least for appearances, if nothing else.
Yeah, it's only 1901 or 3 or 4. Yeah,
right. At this point, it's like, I think it's like 1904 at this point. So the mom just fully pieces out. And there's like some other friend that Thaw has. He's like, oh, my friend so-and-so will take over as chaperone. This doesn't happen.
Sure.
So he takes her. So he's taking her around Europe. At one point, they're at this castle. And I was like, say more about the castle. Why are you staying at the castle? Is it a hotel? They don't unpack this at all. But they're staying at this castle.
Great.
Fully just at a castle. And he's like, will you marry me, please? There's different accounts of their time in Europe and specifically like their time in this castle. And some accounts say that when they were at this castle, he actually did beat her, or he whipped her at some point and then was like, oh, I'm really sorry about that, and like walked it back. And then other accounts have no mention of this. And her initial testimony was that he never was violent with me. So I didn't believe Stanford White's accounts about the other people because I had no reason to believe that this was true. Right. Because I'm like, if he had beaten her, she would have been like, oh my gosh, like, Stanny was right. And I feel like would have pieced out. So just that is a footnote. Some accounts say that at the castle he beat her. Other accounts say that no, that didn't happen. He was still on his best boy behavior. Right. So they're at this castle and he just, he's unbalanced behind the scenes, but to her, he's mostly okay. And she knows that he's, I think, like erratic and dramatic, but I don't think she's really seeing him be like fully violent. So he's like, please marry me. And he's kind of having a little bit of a breakdown. It's like, why won't you marry me? He's making this desperate plea. And she finally is like, I can't, and is implying that something's wrong. And he asks her, is it because of Stanford White? And he's thinking like, are you like in love with Stanford White? And she uses this moment to tell him about the assault
2 years prior.
Yeah, like, from 1901, she finally tells him like, hey, Stanford White like raped me when I was 15.
Did she feel like the song says, did she feel, basically she wasn't a virgin? Did she feel like unclean and so then therefore couldn't be married?
Tell him.
Yeah, exactly. And she knew that he had this idea of her as like the most perfect woman. And of course you're, yep. And for her, she was like, well, I've been ruined, air quotes.
You don't want me. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And she was really emotional about it because I think at this point she was a little bit older and she probably had a better understanding of, this is not
She wasn't
great.
maybe in shock anymore.
Yeah. Like I didn't choose this, and this is, but I also have this like ongoing relationship with this person, and it's just really muddy and weird, and I don't know how I feel about it, but I definitely know that was not okay.
Right.
So Harry Thaw has a full breakdown about this, spends essentially all night sobbing, and he says, rightfully so, like the quote from her is, he kept saying, poor child, which I was like, oh. And it's
is
kind
it
of
like
lovely because
no one's going to beat you but me? Is it like that, or
I don't know? It seems like he genuinely
had some empathy then.
Yeah, he was genuinely sad that like, oh my gosh, like this horrible thing happened to you and you were a kid, but then it gets insidious.
Well, so and we don't know again what his mental illness was because there was some stuff going on for sure.
For sure.
Yeah.
So finally, they come back from Europe. And she agrees to marry Thaw, and they get married in 1905. Okay. So he's like, and I think it's a sense of, you've told me the truth, and I still want to marry you. You're not ruined to me.
Right.
Nice.
Thank you.
But also like, oh, well, now I
really hate this guy. Yeah.
Now I really hate this guy, and I'm going to marry you, but also maybe like low-key vengeance a little bit. So she
gives
marries
me an
him
excuse because I hate this guy already.
Yeah. So they get married, and Stanford White is like, no, but she still continues to like, not necessarily like see him, but they're still running in the same circles because she's trying to make it as an actress, and Thaw has no problem with this, with her being sort of like famous. His family hates it.
I was gonna say his family does not feel the same way.
His family is
like this, you know what I mean? Like, this is who you choose. How dare
his family is like, who is this floozy?
Right. You can come to the country, but you cannot bring your floozy.
Yes, family hates it, and he's like, I don't care. I'm unbalanced. Like, I'm doing way worse stuff than marrying like this perfectly nice girl.
Yeah.
So they get married, and she's again like she's trying to make it as an actress. It's not really happening for her, but she is still moving in the New York arts and culture scene. So they're back in New York. They set up shop. So
she's like a modern day reality star.
She really is. So this is where the crime.
Bye, Soph.
Oh, the buddy.
She just left.
It's like, I've had enough of this podcast.
Yeah, she's like, I'm done.
So strap in, because this is where it gets real. So this is where the true crime part comes in. So the murder takes place on June 25th of 1906 at Madison Square Garden. So yeah.
Whoa.
So,
I didn't know that.
I was like, why are you burying the lead, Ragtime musical? So Evelyn is there with her husband, Thaw, and they are seeing, it is opening night of the show, like Mademoiselle Champagne. It's some new show that's opening. I think it flopped almost immediately, maybe because of the murder. That might have had something to do with it.
Other than the murder, how was the show?
We'll never know, because
it's like My American Cousin at Ford's Theater. Like, nobody ever does that show. Because
right.
You know, maybe it's a great show. We don't know.
Yeah. The murder really just kind of
Yep.
So it's opening night of the show. She and Harry Thaw, they arrive kind of late. They take their seats, and I guess there was like a theater space. The show was happening there was like a rooftop garden / stage performance space. So they're there, and she like sees a mutual friend, and she's like, oh, I'm going to go over and, say hi to so-and-so. And she's talking with this other person, and across the venue, because I guess it wasn't like traditional theater seating. They're like seated like cafe tables and stuff. Okay. And she sees Stanford White roll up, and she's like, oh, there's Stanford White. And
there's Stan. Hey, Stan.
There's Stan. Yeah, and no reason for him not to be there. Like, he only designed the building and, like, lives in part of it.
I was going to say, has an apartment there.
Yeah, like, normal. Okay, whatever. But she's like, oh, hey, look, there he is. So she sees him there. And it was, I think, not even maybe about halfway through the show, but she was like, hey, I'm going to get up and I'm going to go over here. I don't know if I'm, like, feeling this. And all of a sudden, Harry, out of nowhere, she looks over and she sees Harry just stand up and is, like, approaching Stanford White with a gun and just walks just, like, right up
during
to him.
The
just
show?
Like during the show.
Not had started yet.
No, during the show. So the show was like...
Yeah, they were fashionably late.
We've all had those unruly audience members, but this is ridiculous.
Yeah, again, they're all sitting at cafe tables, and it sounds like it was a little bit more, like, informal. People were like, hey, I'll move over here. I'll go to your table.
Cabaret kind of feel, yeah.
Yeah, like, nothing crazy. But she sees her husband approaching Stanford White, like, arm outstretched, gun drawn, and just walks right up to him. And I guess based on the angle, it sounds like Stanford White didn't necessarily see him coming. It might have been coming from the side or whatever. But her husband just casually just shoots him 3 times, at least 2 of which were in the head. And the first shot,
God.
it was like, he got him, he, like, blew, I think, half his face off, essentially. Like, it was not a large caliber weapon, but he shot him essentially.
He was so close.
Right, he walked right up to him.
Like, almost point blank range, right. So, naturally, people freak out because someone's shooting a gun. So people are screaming and running, and she's like, oh my God. And I think she starts, like, running herself, and then she kind of turns, and then she sees, like, her husband is still standing there, and he just very calmly, he puts the gun in the air after he's fired 3 times, essentially just being like, I'm done shooting now. Like,
right, it was just for this guy. Everyone else is fine.
Carry on.
Yeah, don't worry, other people. I did what I came here to do.
Yeah.
Imagine what if the show was, like, really boring, and the critics, like, the next day were like, the show sucked. Thank God there was a shooting to end it.
Yeah,
the best part of the evening was the murder
of Stanford White, because that guy.
Because this asshole. Yeah. So this brings the show to a screeching halt, as one would imagine.
Just imagine the actors too. You're like,
son of a bitch. We rehearsed so hard.
Yeah, I was just getting to the best part.
My big break.
Yeah.
So Thaw is subdued, and then the police come. He is arrested. He is taken downtown. So this really then kicks off what is known as the crime of the century, and it is, we'll call them tabloids now, but like the newspapers are sensationalizing every detail of this because these two men and her, all these people involved are public figures. Like they're all celebrities of some sort, and they're all sort of in the same circle. So there's not one, but 2 different trials. I didn't know this part. So the first trial, the first trial actually ends in a mistrial because the jury could not, it wasn't a mistrial, actually, it was a hung jury. So they had to retry him because they could not agree on if he was not guilty by reason of insanity or if he knew exactly what he was doing and fully murdered him. So they had a second trial, and in the second trial,
this just reeks of Chicago. I'm just like, and Billy Flynn enters the courtroom.
Too.
Yeah, it's very
hysterically. There is a character involved in the legal proceedings. I want to say it's the judge whose name is Billy Flynn.
Yes.
In this trial, I was like, "What is Billy Flynn?" Like,
did they both reach for the gun? Oh my God.
So the second trial, they're like, all right, we're going to get this right. And kind of like O.J. Simpson's civil trial, they excluded all of the reporters and people from the courtroom because they were like, hey, we kind of feel like the first one got a little bit botched, maybe or maybe not because of all the coverage. So the second one, they're like, the second one,
media. It was already screwing things up back then. Yep.
Always.
So it's really sad. So 2 things happen that I was like, my pearls are clutched. Like the moms both get involved in this second trial in a really big way.
Okay.
And so it's devastating on both counts. Harry Thaw's mother, essentially to try to save his life, comes in. And again, this old, proud, like old money, wealthy woman from Pittsburgh, she testifies, and it, again, now, but especially then, embarrassingly so, about her son's mental health history throughout his life. And it's just this huge, like, I'm airing the dirty laundry and this shame. And it's
yeah, because they don't want to talk about that.
No way.
Not then, especially.
No.
Yeah.
But she is trying to, get him off on this insanity defense. And also, like, not that, because she's like, he has never been okay, and he's attempted suicide multiple times, and he's using all of these drugs, and we have like affidavits from people from when he was in school, and like that he has this history of erratic and like manic and violent behavior. So this didn't come out of nowhere. This isn't just like, hey, one day I was mad, because his whole thing was, well, I killed White because I was driven to insanity because he had ruined my wife. And it's like, okay, but you killed him in 1906?
2 years later?
Yeah.
Not even that. So you killed him almost a year after she even told you about this event, and like 4-ish years after.
Oh, right. I had my math
thing
wrong.
even happened.
Right.
Yeah. So he assaulted her. Yeah. So she was assaulted in like 1901.
That's right.
Right. And they didn't even get married until 1905. And this murder is, so all this to say, people, the timeline doesn't jive. It's not like she told him and then the next day he went out and killed him. Like, you have a lot of time.
I mean, they were in Europe. So,
but for how long?
Travel. But
we're talking many months, if not close to a year. Yeah, there was significant time to cool down from this upsetting news. But he's like, he disgraced my wife, he ruined her. This is why I had to kill him. So did he murder him in cold blood, or was he insane? And so they're like, well, you couldn't have been just driven insane by the information because you were told a while ago. So the mom is like, no, he's always sort of been erratic and unwell. He saw him.
This was just a ticking time bomb. He was a ticking time bomb. This was going to happen.
In that moment he snapped, but also he was also carrying a gun, question mark?
Was he always armed? That's another disturbing moment.
Yeah, that was not something they unpacked, but that was a question I had to him. Like, you just happen to be carrying a firearm with you.
Yeah.
So,
well, that's why we have those really smart gun laws today, so that if you have a history of violence, you're not allowed to wait a minute,
or mental illness. Yeah. Oh.
If it's documented that you are mentally unwell, and everyone has been saying this throughout your checks notes entire life,
you shouldn't have a gun.
Maybe
that's all we're
not
saying.
You. That's all we're saying. Just maybe not you, for yourself and others. Yeah. So Evelyn Nesbitt's mom, this is where, again, I'm like, are you just the worst? So Evelyn Nesbitt's mother is devastated by the murder of Stanford White, because she's like,
she always liked Stan.
I always liked Stan.
Yeah.
My benefactor, and she was like, he was a nice man. And remember, she never liked Harry. So she's like, your dumb husband murdered my favorite person. So the mom totally goes to the prosecution and rats out Evelyn and every embarrassing like detail about like their relationship. She totally testifies against her daughter's interest and her husband's interest. So she shares all this embarrassing information, basically says she's a liar, because Evelyn, I guess, had told her about the assault, and her mother was like, that's not true. Not at the time, but she told her like several years later at some point. Her mom's like, that never happened. You're making that up. So she refused to believe anything that Evelyn told her. So she's like, Evelyn's lying and Harry's lying. They're just liars, and they're trying to besmirch Stanford White's name. So the mom was testifying for the prosecution. I was trying to make Evelyn out to be this floozy, basically, who just couldn't be trusted.
Moment the mom could have betrayed her daughter throughout her life.
That was the one.
No, but she like did it every time.
Yeah.
She was, oh my God. She left her in Europe. She went out of town when she was 15 and had this guy check in. Like, did
she have a thing for Stan?
I think the mom might be the villain in this whole thing.
Right.
I think she might have, because like they were probably closer to the same age. I think the mom was still younger than Stanford White, but it's like, hey, why don't you maybe me? I don't know.
Yeah, like she was like, oh, let me just.
Yeah.
And he was like, no, 15-year-old.
Right.
I know, precisely. So all of this to say, Harry Thaw was finally found not guilty by reason of insanity. So, but then they were like, well, you're not getting off. We've found you insane, so we're going to institutionalize you.
Oh, we're going to put you away.
We can't put you back into society, so we're going to put you... Oh, my goodness.
Right. And so he was pissed, but he thought, oh, I'm just going to go home. And they were like, oh, sweetie, no. Like, you're going to a institution. So he was institutionalized, basically, I think, for the rest of his life, and just continued to, be himself, but just under supervision.
Right.
I think she was able to visit him, but his family was like, we're cutting you off because this is like our family money and we're not going to let you have it, like, you floozy. So
you floozy.
Ongoing.
The word really should be used more, and I'm glad we're using it.
It really should. We're bringing it back. So it's like,
bring back
our
the floozy.
son... bring back the floozy. It's like,
I'm
our son
floozy
is...
and I'm proud of it.
Yeah, it's like, so he's like in a asylum essentially, and he's not, in control of himself and or finances. And the mom is like, hey, we've had enough trouble. I have never liked you anyway, so I'm not going to support your luxury lifestyle anymore. You're on your own. So she ended up, I think, officially separating from him. She later married some other guy who was like a dancer in 1916, but she divorced him in 1933. He sounds like a normie. He's like, I'm in the industry too. I'm just another showbiz guy trying to make it. Nothing. He
wasn't exciting enough. Poor Evelyn. No
like,
drama.
Just a person. But so she's trying to support herself. So she turned to vaudeville and to silent films. So she continued to perform on stage after this, and she was in several silent movies, but apparently she just never really made it. Again, she had limited success. She wasn't able to find any sort of steady work because, again, I'm like, I think she was just an utterly satisfactory ensemble player. You weren't going to be a star.
Right.
But I think it was confusing because she had all this notoriety as like this beauty, and she was part of this like huge case with like
crime of the century.
It's the whole no press is bad press for her, right?
Right.
Yeah, it's like you're famous but not talented.
Reality star.
Yeah, reality star a little bit. Yeah, a little bit before that was a thing. Like, she was absolutely a reality star. But she did have one son with Harry Thaw. I guess they must have had conjugal visits at the asylum because Russell Thaw was born in 1910.
Great name.
Then there was Russell Thaw.
It's a great name.
But there was sadly there was legal battles over like custody of him with her husband's family. It was just, again, very messy. And they're like, you're a floozy in show business. You couldn't possibly be a mother as well. Like, it's
those two things don't go together.
No, not at all. So she published a memoir in 1934. So this is after she's been doing the vaudeville thing. She's done some silent movies. She's married and divorced the normie dancer guy. So she published her memoir. It's called Prodigal Days. I have not been able to find it in print, but she recounted her life story, including her relationship with Stanford White, the murder trial, and that gave her a little bit of money, but it also brought back, again, the public interest in that story. Yeah, again. So just in her later years, everything says she lived a pretty low-key life. Like, she was like, you know what, I'm good. I don't need to be in the public eye anymore. I just want to be, a person. Like, I've been really, like, you think about from 15 to probably like almost into middle age, she was just sort of in and out of the spotlight or trying to be, in modeling or theater, and just the thing she was most famous for, it was never like a role or a show or a movie.
Right.
She's famous for this murder. And it's like, can I just live? And everyone's like, no. So she became reclusive, and she just like kind of tapped out of the public eye altogether. She moved to Los Angeles.
That's an interesting choice for getting out of the spotlight.
I know, right? Well, I think also like
back then,
Fight Together, silent film was probably Hollywood as we now know it was really starting to emerge, which was probably what took her out there in the first place. But she was living in LA, and she did not die until 1967.
Really?
So you think of her as being like an old...
She saw the Kennedy assassination, people. Like, yeah, 1967. She was 82. Yeah, so she passed away in a nursing home in Santa Monica, California at the age of 82. Which I'm also like, for someone born before the turn of the century to live that long is also kind of an achievement.
Fascinating too. Like the things that she saw.
Yeah, she's got, I mean,
stories.
I'm
Sorry about my dogs.
That's okay. This is the dog pod. I am surprised she didn't write another memoir later, because I'm sure that, like, she seemed to attract adventure and drama. I don't think it just stopped. I'm sure that more, you know what I mean? She probably had some more adventures along the way. Like, what an exceptional life journey she was on.
I know. I had the same thought. I would love to track down that memoir that she wrote, and just to read her account, because again, like I said earlier, some of the different, testimony or the way she framed it at different times with news reporters and people, she was like, oh, he seduced me, or oh, he assaulted me, or the details get muddy, but at the end of the day, the broad strokes really do remain the same. And a lot of the details about, like, the relationship with her mother being so fraught, I was like, this makes me sad. Like, this was just a young woman who, I don't want to say, like, I don't want to cast her as like a victim, because I don't know that she would describe herself that way.
Yeah.
But it was like, you didn't have a chance.
No.
You're this kid, you're thrust into the largest city in the world. You have these two different men, neither of whom have your interests in mind, and they're both gaslighting you into thinking that the other one is lying, and neither one is good for you. And then the one person in your life who's supposed to support you, your parent, your mother, is like, you bitch. Like, you're rebuffing the advances of this wealthy man who's like, he's very nice, and she's like, he assaulted me. Your mom's like, you're a liar, you're just a floozy, from the theater. The theater's been a bad influence. It's like, man, she really couldn't catch a break. But I hope she found some peace in her later life, where she was just able to live and just like chill and just kind of live off of royalties of earlier.
I hope that memoir too, she was able to tell what really happened.
Right. Like there was
so she could have some peace there too.
Yeah. There's a quote from her. Like, I was trying to find some different quotes that she gave over time, but it's in the very first chapter of this book, American Eve. And I was like, oh, but her quote is, plain girls are the happiest.
Oh.
And it's like, man, because it really just kind of sums it all up. If it's like, if I wasn't so beautiful,
I mean, don't you
maybe none of this would have happened.
No, it's so true.
The three of us deal with that every day.
That is so sad, but true.
Yeah,
it's not something that's gone away either. It just was a little more prevalent back then, because women, couldn't have bank accounts or do anything on their own.
Right. You had so little agency. Like, you really did, quote, like, need a man. It's like, you're going to get married, or like your father's going to take care of you. Oh, you don't have a father? Well, that narrows it down. So just all these anecdotes, but there are so many photos of her which have survived, which is really pretty incredible. I can't even imagine how many more there were photos and sketches and drawings and stuff, like, even from that time that they kept, which is pretty fascinating. But I want to show Madison Square Garden, the rooftop garden. I'll try to find a better photo of it. But this is the murder scene.
Oh. It's such a beautiful murder scene.
Isn't it? It's like beautifully designed. Like, you designed your own tomb.
He did. He designed his own. Wow. How many people get to say that?
I know, right? But one of the few, in wrapping this up, one of the few murders in and of the theater, just theater people and patrons of the theater and performers and designers, and, started and ended in the theater, really. But to have this, literally, like, the crime taking place in the theater that this man designed, this is really pretty wild. There's not a lot of those. So that is the
perfect start to this podcast.
It was a nice kickoff, I thought. But that is the life and times of Evelyn Nesbitt. And
what a great first episode, I think.
Yeah.
Evelyn Nesbitt and the problematic men who surrounded her.
Yep. And that's going to be a theme, I'm certain of it.
Oh my God.
Never trust a man.
Yeah, it's so interesting too. Like, and I don't know, we'll loop back on this, but the song ends with "Stanny's killed, but my mother's thrilled because now I'm the girl on the swing."
Mm-hmm.
Is how that song in Ragtime, like that's kind of the punchline of the song, and it's like, no. this is a little bit of a thing we've probably like misremembered or like we're wrong about, because Mom was not thrilled that Stanford was murdered.
Killed,
and she was also not thrilled about the, I'll say, notoriousness that then took over her daughter's career, because it's like, yeah, you're still beautiful, you're still a model, and you're still trying to have the showbiz career, but it ruined her relationship with her mother. And then also it was never about, oh, she's beautiful, or oh, she's going to be in a musical. It was about, she's at the center of this scandal. So her mother was not in fact thrilled.
Well, and she wasn't making money because she was the center of a scandal back then, you know?
Right.
She wasn't. Yeah. It was ruining her chances because that was looked down upon.
Looked down upon. It's interesting too, because the book Ragtime by E.L. Doctorow, they had the historical strokes correct in the book about Stanford White and Harry Thaw and the ruination of Stanford White, you know, in 1901. They had all those pieces correct, but the book Ragtime, if anyone's reading it, like, oh, let me read more in Ragtime. Not a reliable source, because they do fictionalize, specifically Evelyn Nesbitt's storyline gets fictionalized in a wild way.
Yeah.
This is not in the stage musical, but the character of Mother's younger brother.
I was like, I know exactly where you're going with this.
Has this fantasy, like having a relationship with Evelyn Nesbitt, and basically like stalks her in a way that I was like, this is on brand, but also this did not happen. At one point, hides in a closet and like
he's in a wardrobe,
jacks off, watching her. It's very upsetting.
Undress.
So part of me, part of me was like, this is on brand, and the other part of me was like, this is not a thing. So if you're reading the book Ragtime, just take the Evelyn Nesbitt plot with a grain of salt, and if you're seeing the show Ragtime, just know that while entertaining, they're really not doing Evelyn Nesbitt a solid in the musical there, because the swing really hardly figures into anything at all. It was almost a sidebar and just some other random photographer studio. And mom was not thrilled. Mom did not do her job.
No, she did not. No.
But that's it. That's it, friends.
We did our first one.
Yay!
Proud of us.
Well, we'll be back with more episodes, so stay tuned for whatever is on docket next. Check us out next time on the Wicked Stage Pod.
That's great. You want to give them our social again, Ashley?
Yeah. Follow us on our Instagram account, which is Wicked Stage Pod on Instagram. I think we're going to be making a Patreon.
You can find the information for that. We'll put it on social. So
well, I certainly hope we get the rights to music so that we can play the song we've been talking about the whole time.
Crime of the century. If not, just go look up Ragtime, and it's called Crime of the Century, and it's fantastic.
Apple Music, Spotify.
Any one of us playing it, because it could be one of us, and the review could be for someone else.
It really could.
It really could.
All bets are off.
All bets are off when it comes to us.
Well, thanks. Awesome. Thanks, team.
Yeah, this was so much fun. I'm so glad we finally did it.
Woo!
We did it.
I love it.
Until next time.
Until next time.
And scene.
Thanks for listening to this week's episode of the Wicked Stage Pod.
Follow us on Instagram and check out our Patreon for more exclusive content.
These deliciously wicked episodes drop every other Friday, so make sure you subscribe or follow and don't get left waiting in the wings.